Welcome to Climate Quest. Today we are thrilled to welcome Alba Forns, Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree and COO and co-founder of Climatize, an impact investing platform making renewable energy investments easy, transparent, and accessible. Since its launch in May 2023, Climatize has helped to channel millions into solar projects. Alba is also an ODI Environmental Foundation scholar, Young Energy Ambassador, a TEDx speaker, and a startup advisor. With a background in engineering and 2 masters in renewable energy technologies from KTH Royal Institute of Technology, she brings deep expertise in climate finance, impact investing, and scaling climate startups. Alba, welcome to Climate Quest. We are excited to have you here to talk about climate entrepreneurship and your journey to co-founding Climatize.
Thank you for having me, Anastasia. Vicky, it's my pleasure.
Perfect. Let's dive in a little bit of an introduction. Can you briefly introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners and share what has inspired you to start working in the climate space?
Sure, happy to. So, as a matter of introduction, my name is Alba. I am originally from Barcelona, so I'm actually calling in from there today, but I work in the US. And maybe what kind of brought me into climate, I actually started being obsessed with climate since I was a kid, right? Like I've always been curious, fascinated by nature and the environment. And that kind of love that I felt for the planet developed into a feeling of responsibility as I grew older. So we were all taught at school the impacts of climate change. That's really something that I obsessed about. And then as I grew, I decided to get into activism. I was part of the Fridays for Future marches. I met Greta Thunberg in Sweden. I was part of an organization called Renewable in Sweden as well, where we put trash out of the oceans. Then I organized workshops about microplastics. So at a personal level, I was very, very involved. And then professionally, I decided as well to invest my career path in something that could actually change the world for the better. So that's when I went into engineering. And after engineering, I pursued 2 masters in renewable energy technologies. So I really tried to do everything that I could from a personal and professional standpoint. And then aside from that, when it came to like my career choices, I also chose very energy related jobs. So for instance, I was an energy consultant and there I was engineering renewable energy projects, energy efficiency, I did circular economy. I did some policy work as well at a Spanish, European level, city level as well. I pushed through one of the most important climate policies here in Barcelona, which is the low emission zone. And through my work, I managed to reduce 600,000 cars that were entering the city that were very polluting vehicles. And with that, we managed to increase basically the well-being of the citizens by providing cleaner air. So I was a little bit involved in everything. And then, as you know, now I'm a startup founder. And aside from that, I continue to do a lot of work in the intersection between energy and policy at a European and in the US as well. So in a nutshell, that's kind of me. But yeah, happy to expand a little more on anything that you're curious about.
Yeah, that's a very impressive and expansive background, and you've clearly accomplished so much already. How did the opportunity for Climatize come about? The idea and you deciding to pursue that? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, that actually happened at a climate strike. So here you can see how my 2 words kind of like collided, right? So this was literally second week of university. I went to a climate strike organized by Fridays for Future here in Barcelona as well. This was back in 2019. And I went there with who now is my co-founder actually. And when we were there, we saw 100,000 people protesting for climate action. And you can imagine we felt motivation, we were hopeful, we were excited, but then we kind of realized that the next day everyone would go home, nothing would be different, and the only thing that we achieved were a bunch of cardboard signs. So that was really the catalytic moment of us realizing that people want to do something about climate, but when it comes to actually doing something, they don't have any tangible way of making an impact. So that was the first problem that we identified. And then through our lived experience, through being involved in the energy space, my co-founder was a solar installer. As I mentioned, I was an energy consultant. We identified that projects that are under $20 million are severely underfunded. So when it comes to renewable energy, utility scale projects do find capital, but those that are small and medium commercial and industrial scale projects do really struggle to raise financing. So those two problems that kind of seem not connected, we kind of connected them through empowering people to invest directly into those projects by democratizing the energy transition. So that's how it came about. It started as a university project, and then it kind of escalated rapidly, and we decided to take it up on full time after graduating.
Yeah, very, very cool story, and very much aligned with the subject of this podcast because we are trying to do exactly that and give people some tools to convert the climate anxiety and activism into tangible actions. So you're a perfect example of that as well. Tell us, for folks that are not familiar with Climatize, how would you describe it as a quick introduction so that people can get more familiar?
Sure. So we're essentially an investing platform. You can start investing with as little as $10. So that's the minimum. You can select the renewable energy project of your choice. And then through investing, you can earn up to 10% annually. And also, I want to add a disclaimer here that nothing of what I say is investment advice, that everyone should do their own research before making an investment commitment. But yeah, we enable people essentially to be a part of the energy transition by selecting the project that they want to support, and then actually seeing the impact of their money. So they can receive project updates. Obviously, they potentially earn financial returns as well. So it is a way of just connecting them with the energy space and making them feel part of it as well.
Yeah, and I would like to share as well that your team has kindly provided a code for our viewers and listeners that they can use to test out the platform, and we will have it available in the comment section of this recording. When you started out, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, and how did you overcome those?
For us, it was really regulation, essentially. So we are a regulated entity. We are registered with the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, and FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. And obtaining our license to become a funding portal was very challenging. It was meant to take 90 days. It took a full year. So that very time intensive, resource intensive, and it also blocked us from actually launching. So we developed the product, we built our team, we sourced our projects, we started to build a following when it comes to like our potential investor network. But without the license, we couldn't operate. So I would say that was probably the biggest hurdle or challenge that we had to overcome as a company. And then something that might be a little bit more common for other startup founders as well, who are not necessarily in a regulated environment, is fundraising. So as young, or I would say first time founders as well, sometimes it's hard to navigate how to fundraise and how to approach fundraising in a very strategic manner. So that was also a learning experience for us when we were raising our pre-seed as well. So maybe I would mention those.
What were some of the resources or people who were helpful in your journey or overcoming some of these obstacles?
The first and very obvious one is my co-founder. So I would say I wouldn't have been able to do anything without him because, again, being a founder sometimes can feel very lonely. It's very demanding, it's very time intensive. You need to make a lot of compromises, make a lot of personal sacrifices as well. And being surrounded by people who just believe in the mission and wanted to succeed as much as yourself is game changer. So I would say I'm very thankful for having him and for having him as a partner in this journey. So that would be the first person. And then probably our managing director at a program that we did in New York. This program is called Venture for Climate Tech. Our managing director is Jackie Amable. She's no longer in the program now. She was a founder. She started to be the managing director at that program, and then she's now a founder again of another company called The Material, and now she's based out of Switzerland. And I would say she was one of those early believers in our journey. First of all, getting selected to that program was game changer for us as well. We got non-dilutive funding from NYSERDA, the New York State Research and Development Authority. But aside from that, we've also got a lot of mentors, industry connections, and so on. but she was a huge enabler as well. So she was making a lot of introductions. She's continued to support us throughout this journey. And actually this week, we had a call with her to ask her for advice. So she continues to be present in our journey. And I would say we were very thankful to have her as well.
Great. So what I'm hearing is choose your co-founder wisely or your co-founders and look for some early believers and some great mentors. I think that's great advice. We're moving over a bit to talk about your impact and some of those aspects of your business. And we had some founders of software, like decarbonization software, and some deep tech, climate tech companies on the podcast so far. You're the first one who's a finance and climate founder. So I'm wondering how you are thinking about profitability versus impact for Climatize.
Sure. And I would say there's a huge misconception when it comes to climate companies, because a lot of investors think that we are compromising financial returns. And that's really not the case. Like, if your company is not profitable, or obviously at the beginning it's not profitable, but it's not financially sustainable, it just doesn't make sense. You're doing something wrong, right? So you really need to think about how to scale the business and make it profitable in the long run and obviously financially sustainable. And then you add the climate component to it, because no one wants to pay the green premium. That's obvious. So we need to make the sustainable, climate friendly option sexy. We need to make it profitable, and we need to make it easy, because if not, it's not going to work. So I would say that is the first premise. Yeah, like, being a climate company doesn't mean that we're compromising on profitability. If only, climate change is probably the largest financial risk that our economy has right now. And on the flip side of that, like, the energy transition is one of the largest wealth creation opportunities of our lifetime. So capitalizing on that is not only the right thing to do, but financially a good bet. So I would say maybe that's how we see it as a company at Climatize.
Thank you, Alba. It reminded me of something a professor said here at the business school. He said, sustainable investing is still investing. You have to realize that it's not just a passion project. It's like a business. That your answer really resonated with that. Which kind of KPIs do you have to measure? Do you have to measure your impact? Are you measuring of course, like the dollars invested in renewables, but do you have some other KPIs around CO2, avoided CO2 or something like that? We're really interested to learn about that.
Sure. It's good that you bring it up. I would say our North Star metric is literally that. So dollars invested into climate projects. That is the metric that all of our team is aligned with. So for instance, I'm in the project development team. I'm the one supporting diligence and launching the offerings that we post on Climatize. And one of my goals is to launch X amount of projects or dollars in a certain period of time. And then when it comes to maybe the marketing team, their goal is to actually get those projects funded, right? So like, dollars invested into climate projects is not only something that makes all of our teams aligned with a common objective, but it's also something that we can then very realistically use to also calculate what are the carbon emissions avoided of those projects. That is very project-based, because we have solar projects, we have energy efficiency, EV charging projects at different stages. So that really depends on the project that we are supporting. But yes, that would be the main metric that we track. Then per project, we also track the carbon emissions that have been avoided, and we post that in the project card as well. And then aside from that, we also like to track, which is something that we're starting to do, but it's a little bit more nuanced, how many people have been impacted by this. So for instance, we've done a lot of projects that support low-income families or people in rural areas. And I do think that that's also a very important metric, just to be able to understand how many lives were impacted for the better with this new initiative as well.
Great. So you're actually moving into social impact as well with your measurement. Yeah. Great.
So all of our projects have a social impact angle as well. So all of them are obviously climate related, but then again, there's also some women-led projects which are pretty exciting. So we have a little bit of a social angle that is different depending on the project that you choose. And the last thing that I wanted to add here, Vicky, as well, is this is how we do it as a company in terms of the projects that we are supporting through our operations. But aside of that, obviously we're a small team, remote first, but we do also work in just being sustainable as a business ourselves. So we do that as well.
So you're also kind of working on your internal operational sustainability.
Exactly. And calculating our emissions as a company as well. So that is something that we also track. Again, we're a small team. It's not very actionable right now, but as we scale, that's something that we definitely want to keep in mind. Just to, again, not only do good with our work, but the way that we run our business needs to be aligned with that as well.
That's amazing. And I think that's also something that a lot of companies and startups are not sure about when they should start doing that. So you're doing that right from the beginning.
I think it's important to have it as a mindset is, again, just also you need to understand like availability of resources in a very early stage is very limited. So I don't think all companies should be tracking it or it should be maybe your main focus, but it's important as you scale as a company to keep it in mind and then start implementing whenever you have the resources to actually make it actionable. So I would say yes, there's a point where that needs to be more front and center, especially as you scale. We're still early, so we're in the phase of considering it and then starting to take action now.
That's great. And I'm sure that for your company, it's going to be super interesting to compare your footprint and your handprint at some point, because your handprint of the emissions you're avoiding and like the lives you're touching, it's probably so much larger than your actual footprint of your company, but that's super exciting. Great. So we have some questions around insights for listeners and inspirations of how they could think about maybe approaching founding. So this is a very old question, but would you do anything different if you started over again?
It's a hard question. I would say we obviously made mistakes. I'm sure we made tons of mistakes, but that also shaped who we are now as a company. So I wouldn't say there's something in particular that I would go and change. What I would probably do differently is focus. So when you start, everything kind of feels exciting, right? And you try and do everything and you want to do as many things as possible and you think that everything might be a huge opportunity with a huge upside. And sometimes, like it's hard to differentiate where you should invest your time. And as the company has matured and as we've matured as a team and as a founding team, I feel like now we really know how to identify where we should be investing our time. So focus would be the main suggestion or main recommendation I would tell people. It's kind of hard. It's a skill that's developed with time after making a ton of mistakes. So focus, 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 and then simplify. Because sometimes we want to make things super complex and offer many features in the product and then just overbuild things. And then in the end, the beauty is just making hard things simple and simplifying not only your product, not only your value proposition, but also the way you communicate and the information that you provide in our case, for example, our investors is very important. So the more you simplify, the more efficient you are, and also the more successful you are, in my opinion, as well. So focus and simplify. And as an early stage founder, during the first years, you're not as focused and it's hard to simplify sometimes. So yeah, I would probably point that out.
I think that's great advice. Focus and simplify. So I was just wondering if you weren't already building Climatize, is there anything where you were like other people looking for a topic should totally focus on this, or this is how people should go about finding a topic?
That's hard because in my case, it kind of happened very, I would say, it wasn't planned. Like I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. My co-founder also had that internal desire, and we kind of connected and started this as the project, right? So like it just was easy for us because we didn't really have to like sit down and think, what do we want to do? Like the idea came before. I would say what is important is founder market fit. Probably you've heard that term before, but if you're actually right now, or one of your listeners, viewers is sitting at home and they're trying to think about like, okay, I want to start a business and I don't know what to do. Think about founder market fit, and that essentially means aligning yourself with the market and the problem and solution you want to bring. So having a very good understanding of the industry. It doesn't make sense if your background has nothing to do with AI to go and build an AI company. There's going to be a lot of people that are probably going to do it better than you. Having industry insights that only you have, and that's generally acquired by working in the industry or having some kind of like connection or a network. So I do think that that's also important. And then another thing that I personally think is super important is being passionate about it. having lived experience that gives you a competitive edge. So in my case, climate has always been my main priority. As I said, as a kid, I was always, outside in connection with nature. I was an activist. I've studied climate, renewable energy. That's why we have a renewable energy platform. As an energy consultant, I was engineering renewable energy projects, and then I did a lot of EV charging and energy efficiency, and that's what we're funding today as a company. So it's something that I've been extremely passionate about, and my lived experience is positioning me very well to go and tackle that problem. And passion is important because there's going to be times where you're out of energy, where you're working 24/7, when you're working on the weekends. And if you're not passionate about it, that that sounds like a nightmare. Invest so much time into something that you actually don't believe in. I think that passion is what fuels you when times are not as great. So you will definitely do better as a founder if this is something that you feel very strongly about. But again, there's people who build companies and are extremely successful without being passionate about it. So I don't think it's necessarily a requirement. I just feel like it makes it easier for you to stick around when things are not going your way.
For sure. I really like your sentence that passion fuels you when times are hard. I think that's a great one to remember. Are there any resources like favorite books, reports, networks that you would recommend to other people?
Sure. I would say this is maybe not the network specifically, but surround yourself by people who make you your best self. So, for instance, now I'm working from a co-working space. It's called Norskin. It's actually a foundation and an impact hub here in Europe. So, if there's anyone in Europe listening to you, they should check out Norskin. But when I come here, I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs who are working in impact. I'm working next to people who are going through very similar stages. And this is something that inspires me to continue and to do better. And I do think that that makes a difference. So try and find someone who is going to be helpful and supportive and help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. So that will be one. And that can apply not only to colleagues at work, but to friends, to family. Just try and surround yourself with people that energize you. So that's a very simple one. And I think it's maybe easy to start with that one. Then more tangible ones are more climate related. I would say if you're trying to hire or find a job in climate, I actually know the founders of these two companies that are pretty cool. One of them is called Climate-Based, which has more of a US footprint, and the other one is called In Climate, which has a more of a European footprint. So depending on where you are, maybe you want to check one or the other. And essentially they're platforms that are building a community in climate, and there you can hire or you can post a job if you're a startup founder and you're trying to find people who might join your mission. So those two are good. And there's also, they have a fellowship program they teach you about climate. So I think that that's something also that people who are maybe new to the industry can use to train themselves and then get a foot in the door. So maybe that's another resource. And then maybe accelerator programs. I did mention Venture for Climate Tech. If you have a company and you want to apply, that might make sense as well. Then last but not least, we're on a podcast today. Podcasts are great. I listen to, I listen to many. Open Circuit is one that I really like from Latitude Media. But maybe I would recommend that one. 20-Minute VC is also a very good one for those who are more interested in the startup world. But yeah, I love podcasts. I feel like it's a very easy way to just get up to speed while you're cooking, while you're commuting to work. So maybe those two are more, one of them is energy related, the other one's more startup focused. But yeah, those are the ones that come to mind right this second.
Those are amazing and very tangible. So thank you. I'm sure our listeners and viewers will really appreciate those. What is next for you and Climatize? Paint us a little bit of the future universe and what are you excited about in the climate space?
Sure. So I would say our main goal is to fund $1 billion of climate projects per year in the next 5 years. So that's big. That's
amazing.
A big goal.
Love it.
So that's what we're striving for and kind of chasing, and really to grow and to continue doing what we're doing, but at scale. So it's been 2 years since we launched our first project now. and we are at 8 million. So actually yesterday we announced that we crossed the $8 million dollar channeled into climate projects. Thank you. 17 projects. And that's very exciting. We already returned 25% of the capital. So that's looking good as well. And yeah, just doing what we do, but at scale. And we also see climate. I mean, obviously, climate change is a global problem, and we think it needs a global solution. So we do see ourselves expanding, not right now, but at some point. Right now, we're only US based, and we do want to expand to other markets whenever the time is right.
Amazing. Well, thank you once again for coming on. Are there any parting thoughts you have for our listeners?
I would suggest, or maybe like add a call to action for those. If you have some entrepreneurs, people who are maybe thinking that they have a cool idea, just get started, because I feel like the hardest step is just to actually get started and do something very small, and see how it goes, because there's a lot of brilliant people with brilliant ideas who at the end of the day don't end up doing anything about it, which is kind of a shame. So I would just encourage them to give it a try and see how it goes. And maybe as a easy like way to get started, I would say just test it. Start asking people in the industry, schedule interviews. If it's more of a consumer product, ask your friends, ask whoever you think the target customer is. Then whenever you have really validated that there's a problem that needs to be solved, that's when you actually start building the solution, right? But that first step can be sometimes scary, and it is
Yeah, start small, but start. Golden words.
exactly.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you once again for coming on and sharing your knowledge with our community. And we are going to be cheering for you and Team Climatize.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anastasia and Vicky. It's been fun.